Hello, one and all. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching live or checking out the stream later. We are going to be taking a look at Quentin Tarantino's latest hit, blockbuster. I think maybe on pace to become his highest grossing film, which is, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is really, if you can equate Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous to a Quentin Tarantino movie, it is this. It is nostalgic. It is romantic in the nostalgia, rose-colored glasses sense. Except it's Tarantino, so it's also pretty damn bloody. But it's really a fun movie. Now, usually, this is not going to be a review, although I did enjoy the movie a lot. This is not going to be one of those movie videos like I frequently do, which is a Ghost Hunter Watches series, where I'll take a paranormal movie, a supernatural, a ghost story movie, and I will talk about what they got right in history, what they got wrong in history, or even if it's not a true story, I'll talk about where they got outlandish and what was actually grounded in some bit of reality. This movie is unique because, well, for one, it's not a supernatural film at all. There's no element of the paranormal in this movie whatsoever, although they could have had some opportunities in there. Of course, I could say that about Cinderella. I mean, really anything I could put something spooky into. But also, Tarantino, although this is happening in a historical time period, which is 1969 Los Angeles, there are some manufactured, some created, purely fictional characters. And even though the framework of history is there, as we know from Inglourious Basterds, he does not mind rewriting history to better suit what he wants. What probably all of us want history to feel like, and to, we like the good guys to win. We like the bad guys to really pay. So that's a little bit of a spoiler. However, I will say that if you haven't seen the movie yet, well, you probably wouldn't have clicked on this if you're afraid of spoilers, but I will save any of those kind of twists until much later in this video. Really, what this video is going to be about is talking about the plethora of haunted locations, real life haunted locations where they filmed and that play a role in this film. Also, because this is kind of Tarantino's love letter to Los Angeles, it's a place that I called home for 8 years and is still near and dear to my heart. And I get back a few times a year and I absolutely love the place. I'm going to tell some of my favorite moments that relate to this film still. Of course, I did not work on this film, but still I have connections to some of the places in this movie and some of the people in this movie. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to go down memory lane myself and Cameron Crowe it myself. So where do we start? Where do we start with such a big, it was like 2 hours, 40 minutes long, huge cast of characters, fictional and real, lots of really unique locations and stories and subplots. Well, let's start with the poster right here. It's really unique because I was so excited when I saw this in the film, but it's only kind of a glancing thing in the background you see once in a while. And I was so excited that upon a closer look, you could really see it, even on the poster, in the dead center of it, right next to Margot Robbie, who plays Sharon Tate, of course, is the Vogue Theater sign, which is pretty iconic. It's just a couple doors down from Musso and Frank, which we will get to a whole bunch. On Hollywood Boulevard. But yeah, there's the Vogue Theater. It's on Hollywood Boulevard, and it was one of the stops on my ghost tour when I was doing the LA Hauntings tours, which was really a unique and fun thing to do. And going down Hollywood Boulevard anytime is fun. And usually by the time I got to downtown Hollywood like this, I was 2+ hours in. My voice was starting to get sore. I was starting to get a little fatigued. But being stuck in Hollywood traffic meant that we could just sit down and watch all the chaos unfold around us. And the entertainment came from just outside the windows as everybody was clubbing or doing whatever kind of weird, fun stuff that Hollywood loves. But the Vogue Supper Club, as it is now, before it was a supper club, it was a theater. Before it was a movie theater, I should say. Before it was a movie theater, going way, way back to before it was Hollywood Boulevard. It was Prospect Street. It was a dirt road, and allegedly, and I'm going to say allegedly on this one a whole bunch because we've had a lot of difficulty verifying this, but there's kind of a doozy of a ghost story associated with it. First off, that's the sign as it looked in the 1960s. Oh, and by the way, all of these pictures, if you go right now to whatsyourghoststory.com, you can follow along with this little slideshow. That's where I am, so that you can check it out yourself. But the Vogue Theater, the sign is completely unchanged. It has the word Vogue spelled out letter by letter. going down and across the big marquee out front. Even though it's not a theater, it still has that theater marquee style. We'll keep there. As the story goes, there was a schoolhouse on this same plot of land in the early 1900s. And it's kind of amazing to think about how quickly Los Angeles and Hollywood has grown, because right now, you think back to the city you live in the Midwest or the East Coast, you think 120 years ago, it still has the bones of what we know today. The streets were paved, the buildings were there, the infrastructure was there. But places like the Sunset Boulevard, it was just a bean field at this point in time. And Hollywood was not much different than that. So it was still a small rinky-dink farm community. The Hollywood pictures were Hollywood, as we come to know, was not nowhere near what it is today. But so this plot of land was a schoolhouse. And as the story goes, there was a fire that broke out in this schoolhouse, and many, many people died in it. It was a small schoolhouse, so I guess percentage-wise, it took a big loss of life, including at least 3 adults and at least 6 children, but I think more than that. And the reason that we're saying this is because, well, so it went through its life as a movie theater, moved forward ahead all the way up to the 1990s. And there may have been some whispers, I'm not even sure if people had claimed that this was a haunted place, but it was in the 1990s that a group called ISPR, the International Society of Paranormal Research, ISPR, moved into this location, intending to use this as their headquarters, as this just office space. And upon moving in and getting settled, they began to notice that the location is very active, very haunted. So they didn't really have to, imagine the Ghostbusters moving into their firehouse, and then the firehouse is haunted. They don't have to go out looking for business. They just study where they are. And that's basically what happened. The ISPR, they ended up just doing so much research at that location, and then publicizing it, putting it out there. A lot of that is difficult to find nowadays. So here's why I say alleged when I talk about the tragedy of the location. Most of what we know today about the firehouse, the schoolhouse, I should say, and the loss of life, the children's deaths. And again, but I forgot to say that they claim that they made contact with, I think, 8 spirits. 3 were adults and the rest were kids. They came across Mr. Fritz, who was maybe a janitor or somebody along those lines. I think it was actually a projectionist. That's right. He wasn't even from the schoolhouse fire, but he was somebody that died in the movie house. That Miss Elizabeth, a school teacher, and a number of children. They identified a set number of children that they were allegedly able to make a lot of recurring communication with. Psychics were the ones that came in and did the historical research on the place. And it was from their feelings and intuition that they told the story about the fire, the schoolhouse fire. Now, that's not to say that didn't happen, but I would love to have more to it than that. I would love to find a newspaper article, and this was a Wild West time, so it was very difficult to do research at this location at this time period. But I think even if we could find stuff like that predates the 1990s, if there was some look back in time from the 70s or 80s that verified that there was a schoolhouse fire there, that would be a better stamp than psychics. And I do believe in psychic ability and all that, but I just want more, always want more to verify. So again, this is the Vogue Theater. It is right on Hollywood Boulevard. You see it a number of times really quickly, just in the background. But I think Tarantino must have absolutely loved this location because they made sure to highlight it. And it's really fun to see. If you go onto YouTube and type in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you'll find a whole bunch of cell phone video taken from people on the other side of the road, the side that wasn't on camera. And you can see Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio going up and down the street. And so much of the shots are centered around the Vogue Theater. It's kind of funny that it doesn't play a bigger actual role in the film, but something that does play a huge role in the film, and something that even plays a big role in the trailers, which is maybe the first thing that made me say, I need to see this movie. Because I was very apprehensive about Tarantino covering the Charles Manson murders. But once I saw, even in the trailers, multiple shots that took place at Musso and Frank Grill, who this year is celebrating their 100th anniversary. And let's take a look back around the 1910s when this one was taken, maybe 1920s. This is I don't know if it's an original photo, but it dates way back. Musso and Frank's Grill, as it says then. It's currently Musso and Frank Grill. Oldest restaurant in Hollywood. And here's a shot from the film, walking in. It's amazing. It is a time capsule. It is just absolutely frozen and preserved by people that absolutely love the location. The owners, the wait staff, everybody has so much affection for this place because it just has so much history. You see the waiters in the red jackets, which in this shot kind of makes me think of The Shining. But they use waiters that are actually waiters at Musso and Frank in the film as extras, which is fantastic because they themselves are such a link to history. Most of the people that work there are up there in age because they've been there for such a long time. They've only had, I believe the number is 5 chefs, 5 head chefs that have just continually passed the torch to the next one. So spanning 100 years, nobody kind of comes in, comes out, moves on to the next thing. It's a place that really is locked in time. The furniture is as original as possible. The wallpaper up top, the cloth wallpaper is very original. It's cigarettes, smoke stained, but they could be the exhales of Howard Hughes or Orson Welles. And they say things like the chair might have a ding on it, but they're not going to replace that chair because that could have been knocked over by Cary Grant on one drunken bender kind of a night. You just don't know. The place is that tied to history. But of course, getting into history. Oh, and then this is actually in the back. It's in the parking lot area. This is maybe my favorite from a filmmaker standpoint. One of my favorite shots in the film. If you guys have seen it, you know this is right after DiCaprio had his soul shaken because he realized he's getting old, and a producer kind of really just laid it down that, hey, your days are numbered, so take what you can get. Let's go make movies in Italy, which he thinks is very below him. But while he's having this midlife crisis moment, we see on the sign "oldest in Hollywood" right behind. That's not a mistake that's there. I love that little thing. So getting into the ghost stories, which is why we're here. I love that they shot not only at a haunted restaurant, but they shot exactly where one ghost is seen. This is the back entrance to the to Musso and Frank. So coming from the parking lot, you come in, the bathrooms are right here. And it's in this area that people have claimed to see Rudolph Valentino kind of making eyes with and flirting with women in the restaurant. On the exact opposite side, which you also see in the movie when they come in from the Hollywood Boulevard side, there's a door that opens up inwards, and there's this little cove. It's a little a table, little booth that when the door opens, it kind of cuts that booth off. If that door were to stay open, it would be isolated as a whole separate room. And it's kind of because of that. When people come in and not even notice it's there and keep walking into the restaurant, that's why Charlie Chaplin preferred that booth. You'd think it would be odd to sit up front if you're trying to avoid a public spectacle, but that's the reason. And it's said that he and Douglas Fairbanks would race their horses down Prospect Avenue when it was still a dirt road, and the loser had to pay for the meal. Which, by the way, I've heard this recounted just recently, I think by Dita Von Teese, and she got the names wrong of who it is, but it was Chaplin and Fairbanks, as the legend goes. And today, people claim to see from inside Musso and Frank, see Charlie Chaplin on the sidewalk outside, peering in through the window, looking at his old table. All right, we're going to get to one of my stories now. So this is in West LA. UCLA territory, which is the UCLA Bruins. This is the Bruin Theater. One of the most LA moments I've ever been able to have, and I have had quite a few. I was an intern at Revolution Studios, so I don't know if there's any hauntings associated with this building, but I just love this little story of mine. So the Bruin takes a lot of film is shot there. Here we see Sharon Tate hanging out front of it. Well, actually, that's the Westwood Village one theater. There's when I was working in Los Angeles, still in college, I was working at Revolution Studios, which at that time they just released Black Hawk Down, and Anger Management was shooting, Triple X was shooting, Punch Drunk Love was also shooting. So Adam Sandler was very busy over there at this point. Unfortunately, Geely was also shooting, which kind of led towards the end of Revolution Studios. But they did a lot of really big things and a whole bunch of different genres. They did some sci-fi stuff as well. I think The Forgotten was maybe one of the names of a sci-fi one. They did The Tooth Fairy. Anyway, on and on. They did a whole bunch of stuff. And it was so cool. I was an assistant to a development executive. So I got to work in the story creating process. Well, one summer day, Mission Impossible, it was just the original Mission Impossible. It was 1 or 2, was coming out. And that was not one of our films, but we were working on that Vin Diesel movie with Triple X. Vin Diesel movie with Triple X, directed by Rob Cohen. And that in front of Mission Impossible was the first place anybody was going to see the trailers to that movie. And so I went out with Todd Garner, who was the number 2 person in the entire company, like huge hotshot. Joe Roth ran the company, but Todd Garner was his muscle man. He was the big guy that negotiated the deals and made things happen. And it's kind of funny that he would have the time to be able to do this. But the two of us, we just went out and we went to 10 different theaters around Los Angeles in the middle of him stopping to have coffee with Paris Hilton. And what we did is we stood in the back of all of these theaters at the very beginning of Mission Impossible just to watch the audience watch the Triple X trailer. And we get over to, and actually, now that I think about it, I don't think it was the Bruin Theater. I think it was the Westwood Village Theater, where Sharon Tate was in this movie. The movie Swim Fan also had a trailer in front of it, which if you remember that one, and if you don't, you're like most people, but if you don't remember it, it was kind of like a Fatal Attraction type movie, but for kids, almost for high schoolers. It was this girl that got kind of nuts and was stalking this guy that she wanted to be with. And it looked so bad on the face of it that I think for most of us, we would just kind of yawn it off and just wait for the next, hopefully better trailer. This audience hissed at the screen with such vitriol. I've never actually heard people hiss at something before, but it was just unbelievable. Like there were scores and scores of snakes slithering through. And you wonder, out here in Westwood Village, do they know that there's people scouting like that? Because the message was loud and clear. It kind of reminds me, I went with Joe Roth actually to a screening of Tears of the Sun, Monica Bellucci, Bruce Willis movie. And it was still in test audiences. And there's a scene in the movie when Monica and Bruce kiss, which is out of left field. It was obvious that, they were trying to force a love story into this really more important story. And the audience booed during that moment. And we were supposed to have this big conversation after the movie where the people taking the notes would get the audience reactions, and they just let everybody go. And said, we have all we need to know from you guys. Thanks. And of course, the movie came out not too long later with that scene eliminated. Moving along. Oh, yes. So we are going to start to get into, one before I jump into El Coyote. The movie, when you see in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when they're shooting the Western film, the Lancer scenes, they shot that at a couple of different locations. And wonderfully, I've got a connection to 2 of them. One of them, because it's haunted, they shot the outdoor street scene locations at Universal Studios. So yes, just down the mountain from Universal Studios Amusement Park is the actual very old sound stages. All that stuff is still in use, and it is Universal Studios. That is one of the oldest studios, oldest backlots around. You think back to The Mummy and Frankenstein, all those classic Universal monsters. All that stuff was shot right there. So you'd think that there might be a lot of ghost stories coming out of that place. I've heard whispers of a whole bunch of different things, but one that is really celebrated is on stage 28. That's where Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces, who played the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he played just tons upon tons of scary individuals. That's where he recorded, or where he shot Phantom of the Opera. And that is where today people still see him kind of wearing the Phantom cloak. They don't really see him in the ghastly makeup, but they said that people have claimed to see him clear as day, be able to identify his face, and he just appears and disappears. He walks around the lot itself, or the soundstage itself, and also on the catwalk overhead, which to have a spooky ghost overhead clanging around is additional level of spooky. And people have talked about things, objects moving on their own, voices with no known origin popping out. So it apparently is a very active location, including after dark. After things have wrapped, the security guards will see lights turn themselves on their own on that soundstage. So apparently it's pretty active. And so is he, because I glossed over this. But before I leave Hollywood Boulevard, I should get back to Hollywood and Vine, that super iconic intersection that isn't really iconic for any real location other than just to say that you're in downtown Hollywood. You'd say you're broadcasting from Hollywood and Vine, although there was never really any soundstage really on that corner or television studio on that corner. Granted, there were radio stations and television stations nearby, but Hollywood and Vine is kind of a boring corner, except that is where a very young Lon Chaney would sit on a park bench, try to catch the bus home, maybe await word that he got a part he was auditioning for, or await word that somebody was going to come by to try to wrangle more extras. And as he became unbelievably successful, he would go by that bench looking for extras and try to help them out as well. So he passed the torch as much as he could. And they even dedicated a park bench to him that sat right there that he has been seen at. Sadly, that park bench, which is, I mean, how can you not consider that important? That even said the Lon Chaney bench on it. Of course, after being there for about 15 years, the city swapped it out with something that had a billboard on, and he's never been seen again. Lon Chaney Jr., his son, of course, said he wouldn't be caught dead sitting on something that looked like that. So Lon Chaney's ghost is no longer there, but now he's maybe more active at the Universal backlot. So the El Coyote restaurant is the Mexican restaurant where Sharon Tate had her final meal in real life with all of her friends, which is something that we see in the film accurately. However, I don't think they sat at the right table in the film. I thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought they took the back corner table, which is why I had a birthday dinner there one time, and I had my picture taken at that back table, which is freaking morbid. But still, you're there. I guess you might as well do that. A really fun footnote is as they're walking into this building, they have this kind of off the cuff, what's going on down the street? Oh, there's a premiere at the porno house next door or a couple doors down. And of course, once upon a time, not to just riff on the title, there was a porn theater down there. And today it's still a movie theater, and it is Quentin Tarantino's movie theater, the New Beverly. So it's a little shout out to himself, I guess, there. Oh, I got off topic. The other location that they shot the Lancer Western scenes is in Newhall, California. I can't remember the name of the ranch. I had it up and I lost it before I sat down. But it's where they shot the interior shots for the TV show Lancer. And that is a place I've worked as well. I worked on this movie. At the time, it was a short film called The Last Dwayne. And I was very happy to see today, as I was looking it up, that we made this short film. I was only on it for about a week or so, because then I had to leave that to go finish my documentary, Hidden Truth. So go check that out. But The Last Dwayne, we made this with a really talented cast and crew, including, I'd say headlined by, because he's the best, Danny Trejo was in it. Rose McGowan was in it. Jason Patric was in it. And the one thing I have to say is Danny Trejo is the man. It's Semi Valley. It was in the middle of summer. It was so mind-numbingly hot. We're talking approaching triple digits at 9 or 10 in the morning, and then just getting scorching beyond that. Everybody was drinking water profusely. So Danny is an older guy. This was just a few years ago, so it's not like it was a young Danny. And there was a scene where he gets shot, squibs going off, blood flying out of his shirt, crumples to the ground and dies. And I was feeling for this guy, because it is, for a young person, this is a hard day to even exist. And this guy's riding in on a horse and getting blown away, and just having to wear all of the clothes too, heavy clothes. And he rips his shirt open to pull his squibs off. And he's like, all right, let's do another take. And like, he was just ready to go. He was an absolute gamer. And I don't have a ghost story about this, but I like my Hollywood stories to be shout outs to people who are awesome. And Danny Trejo was definitely an awesome guy. And yeah, I was very excited to see, as I tried to look this up today, as we did this as a short film, as a sample to make the feature film, I see a feature film is listed with this same movie poster. So it looks like it's going places. That was very, very exciting to see. All right. So now we're going to get into the spooky stuff, Charles Manson territory. And I'm not really going to get into all the terrible crap Manson has done. There are so many places that you can find these recordings. And in fact, really, you should go to othersidepodcast.com because that's the most recent episode. And we really get into detail about the insanity of Charles Manson, like the genius insanity of Charles Manson, that he was able to make these peacenik hippie people go out and commit these insufferably awful murders of completely innocent, pretty random people. I'm going to start out by saying that in the movie, first off, we barely see Charles Manson, which is great. It's a great take on how to approach this topic, because there's a lot going on there. There's a lot telling there that the people that were most affected by Charles Manson didn't have a connection to him. They wouldn't know his face, except that Sharon Tate did see his face. And I think with Jay Sebring, as the two of them answered the door, Sharon, I don't think Charles Manson ever saw Sharon. I could be wrong on that. I think she stayed back in the house and kind of looked through the window as there was this random person knocking on the door. And of course, he was looking for Terry Melcher, who used to live at the residence. And they blew him off, basically. They said he's in Malibu now. He moved away. And they pretended that they didn't have his address. So they may have saved Terry Melcher's life. They probably did. So that moment is depicted very well in the film. And very honestly, down to the point that I didn't know about this till the movie came out, and then I had to look it up. But just to add creepiness to it, yeah, the Manson clan, they would ride around in an old Twinkie truck just to be even more like Pennywise. So we see very famously in the movie, and this is a frame from the movie, Cielo Drive. This hairpin curve right here is Cielo Drive. It really is the actual location. However, once you see the car go up, make that turn, that hairpin curve, and go up the hill even more, then they cut to a different location. They don't shoot a lot on Cielo Drive, but this corner is pretty iconic for people that have been there at least. And I think Tarantino is very happy that they were able to shoot on that location because they used this shot, this almost exact shot, at least 4 times in the movie. And now we'll go on to the map, which again, this will be shows up pretty good right now, actually. But it'll be even better to look at if you go to whatsyourghoststory.com as I knock the mic over. Stand by, please. Okay, there we go. So let's take a look at exactly where we're talking here. So here we see road coming up, and then there is that hairpin curve. That's the one that's depicted so much in the movie. Something that's different from reality is in the movie, you see the dead end of Cielo Drive as a fairly nice cul-de-sac, or at least a rounded off area where a car could easily turn around. But really the street dead ends down there, which you can see in this map. Let me find it here. Okay. So today, Cielo Drive, there's this enormous house that is very modern, built 20 years ago or less, probably less, I think. And that is where the Tate residence was. The first time I saw the Tate house on the film, I still haven't looked up how exactly they did this, but it took my breath away. They really recreated this house that does not exist anymore. I don't know if they found something built at the same time, maybe the same architect, and they just modified what they had to connect things, or if they actually built a house, or if it was CG, whatever it is, they did a really good job. If you look at the movie and then look at the crime scene photos, unfortunately, there's actually some really beautiful pictures of Sharon still alive and photo shoots that were done at the house. So you can see the house as it stood. They did a great job replicating that. One of the things that I love, because again, we're talking ghost stories here and not all Charles Manson stuff. So here we have the Tate house, and you look across, you can't tell from an aerial, of course, but this is a valley that cuts right in between. And right up here, this is Falcon's Lair, or this was Falcon's Lair. There's still some remnants of the house and garage that Rudolph Valentino lived in. So really amazing. I mean, if you guys go check out my V is for Valentino video I did a while back on that A to Z challenge, I talked all about Rudolph Valentino's ghost stories, including everything that was going on at the house. But very active place, a spiritualist person who was married to a spiritualist that was continuing to try to make contact with him after he died, and allegedly was making contact with him. Something that's really unique, I think, to myself is as well is Valentino was such a lover of animals. So he had very famously he had Great Danes, including Kabar. Was the name of one of them who continues to haunt a cemetery out in Woodland Hills. But if you go straight down this hill, which is very steep, this would be where Valentino had his horse stables. There's not really any remnant of that anymore. But I remember the first time we see Brad Pitt peel out of here in his roadster, fishtails out and goes flying down the street. I thought, oh gosh, that is where people have seen Valentino's horses. And sometimes they've even seen back when Valentino had passed away, but there was still a horse stable there. Valentino himself would be seen there visiting the horses. So this area down here, although it's just a small little area, no shoulder on a very windy road, it's got some ghost stories connected to it. Cielo Drive, man, oh man. So this area is this whole property that was the Tate property is now owned by somebody that is not forthcoming or willing to let people into the house. I mean, you can see the size of it. They don't have time for this. So we have no idea if there's any ghost stories going on at that location. I really hope at some point in time, new owners come in that are open to talking about it. But I did do an investigation at a house on this stretch here. I'm not going to point it out, and I don't have any photos of it because it is a private residence, and I'm not going to show the inside of somebody else's house. But it is a fairly famously haunted location. And this whole area, according to the USGS, and this is all via Barry Taff, who used to be the one of the higher ups in the UCLA parapsychology department. He claims that the USGS says that this is a magnetic anomaly area. And I keep hedging my bet by saying allegedly. I was there. I was able to see how equipment reacts. It's true. It absolutely is there's something weird going on in an energy sense. That's not paranormal. It is something naturally happening there, but maybe these natural goings on make the paranormal easier to happen here. We don't know. We don't know. I love to speculate. This is just wild. Is there something about this energy that pulls this negativity in? Who's to say? Because before Sharon Tate had met her, and along with several others, Abigail Folger, Jay Sebring, Wachowski, and Mark Parent. I got them all, or David Parent. Its last name is Parent. I got them all. Before they passed away, there was a producer who was married to Jean Harlow by the name of Paul Byrne. And although he was madly in love, and come on, he scored Jean Harlow, he was happy. He committed suicide on that property as well. And Sharon Tate, while she was still alive, she saw his ghost, and she had a premonition of her own demise, where she got up out of bed one night to get maybe a drink of water or something, and she saw herself tied to her staircase banister, gagged and tied to it. I mean, that's not exactly what happened in her death, but it's not far off either. So what kind of a hallucination was that? Was it a premonition? I don't know. It's too spooky of a coincidence to ignore, though. So maybe there is stuff going on here that maybe draws in negative things and allows negative things to happen more easily. But whatever the case, I will say that the house I investigated, I was there on 2 occasions. At this point, 5 years ago, something like that. And I was there twice within 2 weeks. I'll tell you, I was really afraid to go. I'd heard some of the stories. This is a place Barry Taff did investigate, and he said it's the one place he'll never return to after going there many times, but just being too creeped out on his own about the place. I guess the Demon House is the other one, but he doesn't have an option on that one anymore. But going to this location, I think I had a nightmare or two about it, just intimidation. And then I went there and got the tour of the house from the owner, and he was talking about this thing will fall over here, or we hear this here. For the most part, it was kind of stuff that I could shrug off, that did not seem very unique, didn't seem very bold to me. There were really minor things, and the stuff that he was saying would knock over on a shelf. I examined them, and they had very uneven bases. So like, okay, well, we're on the side of a hill in an earthquake-prone area. It wouldn't take much to knock this over. As much as he will love to jump up and down next to it and prove that it doesn't fall over, it was too suspect for me. However, once I got to the lowest level of the house, and at the time he had this young puppy that was jumping all over us and excited to have company, this dog would not step downstairs, waited for us on that landing between the second floor and the lowest floor. It was very unique. You entered this house because it's on the side of a hill. You entered on the top floor and go down, descend as you descend the mountain. The second I got to that level, I felt an intense pressure on my head, as if I was deep sea diving. You feel the pressure of all the water in your ears, and just it's kind of disorienting. And I kept equalizing, blowing my nose to make my ears pop, and they were popping, and they would just instantly, I'd feel that pressure again. And we start walking around the location, and in the back part of the house, there is a portion of the house that is exposed dirt. So you're seeing the side of the hill while you're still standing within the house. And he's had psychics come along that have said that there is a Native American who is buried in that area, still on horseback. Now, I have no idea if that's real. I would love to find out if that was real. That doesn't seem like a common burial practice. So I'm not buying that, but there was something odd going on. And at that point where I first pulled out a compass, just like using an EMF detector to see if there are unseen energy fields, a compass can help you with that. Sometimes the needle won't point where it should be pointing. And at this location, it would do very peculiar things. It would find a certain point, and no matter where you walked, it would continue to keep that point in its target. There are places where the needle just kind of slowly spun around. So I don't know if it was looking for magnetic. I mean, this is not an electric device. It's just your old-fashioned Boy Scout compass. And the needle was just not finding north, or it was finding north everywhere, but it was spinning. It was very unusual. And at this point, we stayed down in the basement, which is a finished basement. It's not a creepy basement, at least 2.5 to 3 hours. And my head never equalized, never felt good. I continually felt that pressure. And on a couple of occasions, it was even so bad I held onto the wall to keep my balance because I thought I was starting to get that kind of dizzy. And I was still on the drive home. I was trying to tell myself that, was it something like I wasn't sick, so it wasn't that, but did it have something to do with going up the side of a mountain? But you live in LA, you're constantly just going up and down mountainsides. So, and it wasn't like we're up in Everest, so it doesn't linger like that. But still, I was trying to shrug it off. And the owner of the house said, when you come back, they'll be used to you and you won't feel that again. So I came back a few days later with a couple of other friends. So there were 4 of us at this point, and we were walking around, and I was even keeled. Nothing happened to me, I don't think. Oh, one thing did happen to me. I haven't told this story in a long time. So again, tour the top floor, tour the second floor, then the bottom floor. Last time I walked in, I felt the pressure immediately. This time I walked in and I had a skeptic walking right behind me, and I was rolling on a video camera, and I didn't capture the exact moment it happened, but I captured most of this moment. She gets pushed into a Lazy Boy recliner that is down there. The skeptic of all people was the one that felt that someone came up to her with invisible hands and arms and threw her down into some furniture. And she bugged out, understandably. Like, someone pushed me. Someone pushed me. No, seriously, somebody pushed me. And after a while, she kind of realized that she was on camera, and she got up and walked out to regain her composure off camera. But there was something very powerful for me, because I know she wanted to be able to prove this wrong. And then she was the one that was really targeted. I only had one minor thing happen. Also, when I was down there, it was just like, I think it was a tap on the neck, kind of an odd sensation to feel. But it was also unmistakable. So that house and possibly this whole area, including Falcon's Lair, there's energy in the air. And the premise, the theory behind it is, with so much energy around, is this whole area like a REM pod, meaning that there's energy for the taking. And if you walk in and you've got some attachment of some sort, whether it's a loved one or somebody you picked up because you were at an antique shop once upon a time, maybe they can make their presence known very easily here. Yeah, that's Cielo Drive. It's a wild, wild place. And I guess that's it, because I think we see just an ad. Yep. So yeah, that is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Oh, I wanted to give a shout out, because I want to call out another great person that I had the privilege of working with, who is in this movie, and that is the great Bruce Dern, who plays George Spahn, the owner of Spahn Ranch. George Spahn was a real person. He also, they depicted him pretty well from all I could discover, that he was mostly blind, that Charles Manson was feeding him girls to keep him satisfied. And he was even the one that gave the nicknames to a lot of the girls that they are so famously associated with now. I worked on a TV pilot that at one point it starred Jeffrey Tambor, and then suddenly we got the news that he was expecting twins, so he bowed out of the project. And I don't know how, but they got Bruce, blanking on his name now, Bruce Dern. I said Bruce Miller. Bruce Dern to fill in and take the reins. And it was such a pleasure to work with him. Really nice guy. He had a lot of things to say about Chicago. I think he lived out here for a while. But we were shooting on Pico in West LA. And there was one point in time at the Pico Playhouse, the small theater in West LA. And there, at one point in time, the whole crew kind of found themselves out in the lobby, and it was just Bruce and I in the theater. He was sitting on the stage, just hanging out, waiting for the next shot. And I was sitting in the first row, and then we just started talking. And we really connected. And he said, you know, this stage, this is the first place Laura was ever on stage. And of course, his daughter is Laura Dern, who, you know, from the Jurassic Park primarily. She's been in a lot of things, but we know her from Jurassic Park. I said, really? This was her first acting gig? It's like, no. I was on this stage with her mom, and she was in her belly. So this is the first place she was on stage. I just love that little connection, little moment there. So we'll go away from the Manson family and end on a sweet little story about classic Hollywood, still around today. Love that we got to see him in another Tarantino film. Let me know if there's any other little tidbits, little locations. We see the Cinerama Dome a bunch in this movie. I've never heard any ghost stories associated with that. If there's any other locations that have additional ghost stories that maybe you know about, something else, maybe a phantom. Musso's would be the place for a phantom waiter or phantom chef. We've never heard any story like that. But yeah, if you have additional stories, let me know. As always, I do want to know, what is your ghost story? And just keep checking us out, Instagram, Twitter, and right on the website at whatsyourghoststory.com. Thanks for watching.